Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weed from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after, a game that I think makes it fairly abundantly clear that the Winnipeg Jets have come back down to earth. Now, I don't think that this is a bad game again by the Winnipeg Jets. I know that you'll have heard my thoughts if you tuned into the last show on this idea that, I think a lot of Jets fans, every time they see the Jets lose, they think it's, well, the Jets didn't show up and they didn't do this and they didn't do that and all these different kind of things, which to me just kind of gets to an area where, like, sometimes you're just a good team and you're playing another good team and the other team beats you on that night. I take a look at this game and I think it's a very similar style game, although I will say I think what we're seeing from the Winnipeg Jets now is a team that was absolutely razor sharp with their details at the beginning of the year. You saw me or heard me on this podcast over and over again talking about the Jets details. There's a number of details in this game that are missing. And they result in goals. I mean, we can go right away to the Morgan Barron turnover is one that pops up right off the bat. The game-winning goal of Vladislav Nemeskov is right with his guy and starts kind of puck watching rather than going to the guy. I still take a look at this game, and I think for the most part, the Jets details are right, but this is the deal here, and this is the thing I think I'm trying to get through from my perspective of what I see, is that everyone out there approaches this as though if the Jets play their game, they just win. And that's creating the assumption that the Winnipeg Jets are just far and away the best team in the NHL. So all they have to do is get to their game and they win. And I know it seemed like that when they had the start that they had, but I stand very, very firmly by the analysis that I had since the beginning of the season that the Winnipeg Jets get to their game faster than the vast majority of teams do in the NHL. I think personally it is extremely evident that what we are seeing as of late is that we're at the quarter pole of the season and teams are starting to figure out who they are. They're starting to figure out how to play with that new winger that they have. They're starting to figure out how that new tweak in the system that they added in the offseason is supposed to be implemented. And what you're seeing now is the Winnipeg Jets, who started off the season with a schedule. Again, have to point out that the Jets, I think it was 11 of their first 13 games came against teams that were below the playoff line last year. Right now, of the 16 teams in a playoff position, I believe 14 of them made the playoffs last year. So there's not a lot of change. I know people were saying, well, that's last year and Nashville, was a different team and all this kind of stuff. For the most part, the league hasn't changed that much so far this year. If you take a look at the teams who are up and who are down, the Winnipeg Jets had a really good start to the season. They had a schedule that asked or allowed that to happen. And now that schedule is catching up with them. They're playing a lot of good teams. They're playing a lot of good teams in a row. And I think they are playing those teams at a time that teams are starting to figure out a little bit who they are. And so what happens is you go into a game like this tonight, and what I see is a very close game. Like, if this was a game and the Winnipeg Jets didn't have this ridiculous start that set these expectations up here where Winnipeg Jets fans and a good chunk of them think that the Jets are just the best team in the league, and when they don't win, they must have totally blown it. What you're actually seeing here is if the Jets had had a normal start, you would have looked at this game and said, so what you would have seen was, okay, the Jets went out against a defensively stifling team. That's a really strong team. It's one of the best teams in the league that can create offense and do these kind of things. And we were right there and made a couple mistakes, one of them late in the game. And that's what stops this from being, a tie game going into overtime where you get a point or maybe you win it in overtime or whatever. Like, the Jets are right here. And the fact that they're playing games like this against a team like the the Vegas Golden Knights. The fact that Jets are playing a team like this in a game like this, that's as close as this is a good sign. But the fact that they've lost 5 of their last 8 games, and one of the wins that they had was probably one of the games where they got most outplayed by another team and they had a goalie steal, should suggest to you that the Winnipeg Jets are now running into a league that has caught up to what the Winnipeg Jets did at the beginning of the year. It doesn't mean this is not a slight against the Winnipeg Jets. This is that the league is now raising its game, and the Winnipeg Jets, who had taken their game team to a place where no one else had taken it at the beginning of the season, where not very many teams in the history of the NHL had taken their game to that kind of place. But now where they took their place, what they're learning right now in this very moment is being the best team far and away in the NHL in the first 15 or so games of the year. That says something, but it doesn't say that you're going on. So I know there's all these folks out there who get really, really offended when they take a look at, Vegas odds that suggest that the Winnipeg Jets aren't much of a favorite to win the Stanley Cup. And they take a look at the power rankings. They get really, really butt hurt about these kind of things. I would hope that you take into account, those are just someone's opinion out there. Don't get to, the Vegas odds are a little bit different, but those other things, the power rankings, that's just someone's opinion. I don't know why you would get so upset over someone's opinion out there. The Vegas odds are like, they make money by making and hedging good bets. Hey, if you are upset and violently angry at Vegas because they've got Jets at, I think, the 11th highest odds to win the cup, the very simple thing that you do, if you think they're wrong, it would mean that Vegas is messing up right now, and you've got a golden opportunity to lay some money out there and make a whole bunch of money if you think that they're blowing that. I'm not out there trying to push you to gamble. Believe me, I don't gamble. I'm not condoning it. I'm not telling you to do that. But like, what you're complaining about, if you were the kind of person who would gamble on something, you would actually be looking at as an opportunity. It's just another way of me saying the Winnipeg Jets are in a place right now where they're starting to see the rest of the league wake up, and they're realizing that they don't just get to be the best team on the ice by a mile every single night, night in and night out. Now they have to get into fights with teams that are very good teams that can match them in intensity, that could match them in gameplay, that could match them in scoring. And now they need to find a way to survive in those tight games, or the ones that they're down a little bit, and find their ways back into those games. For the most part, there were a couple of those games earlier on in the season, but I felt that the vast majority of games the Winnipeg Jets played earlier this season, they were vastly the superior teams in those games. It's the playing field is evening up. And so what happens when the playing field evens up? You got to find a way to learn how to play in those games where the playing field has evened up. And I think right now the Winnipeg Jets are suffering a little bit of maybe a tiny slight hangover of going and playing games where they got used to kicking the pants off of their opposition, and now that's not happening anymore. And it's different winning games when you control the pace from the drop of the puck to the final bell. And when you go in and you're playing games that are just going to dictate, because there's a lot of good hockey teams that are going to dictate that, no, we're going to get the puck for a while and you're not going to get it back. And how are you going to respond to that? There's a learning curve to what the Winnipeg Jets are going through right now. And hey, this is the education. You want to be a championship team. The Winnipeg Jets are being put to the test and being put to the education. Going to see if they can grow going forward right now, but no doubt about it, in my mind, at the very least, I don't see a slumping Winnipeg Jets team. I see a league that's waking up, in the Winnipeg Jets, who may not be so completely and entirely ready for the rest of the league to wake up. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music for his take on the whole thing. Here comes Ken. Ken, I don't know about you. The last road trip you were on, I guess the Winnipeg Jets ran into some stumbles on that road trip as they're learning at this pace here. But what are you taking away from where the Jets are? I see a team that is, for the most part, in these games. They're in these battles. A couple bounces here. The game may turn out a little bit different. Couple bounces there. I think that's a good place to be. I think if you're a coach, you should almost be happy with your team being in a situation where if things went your way, like that game. Hey, if you're getting into a bunch of games against good teams that are coin tosses, I think you should be happy for a coach with that. Where do you think the Winnipeg Jets are feeling in a scenario where they seem to be in a lot of these games, but have found their way onto the wrong side of the games now in 5 of their last 8?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that early in the year the Jets were finding ways to win, and right now other teams are doing the same. I wouldn't say the Jets were necessarily finding ways to lose, though I would say that they certainly had some uncharacteristic mistakes that ended up in the back of their net, including on the game-winning goal where you had a clear blown coverage. Now, again, to take nothing away from William Karlsson, he makes a great play to cut across, but it's not an on-man rush. Jets are equal in numbers. Vladislav
More
Nemestikov.
so. They're overloaded.
Vladislav
They got
misses
4
his
guys
man.
back.
I mean, this is a smart defensive player who got mesmerized by the puck, and simply, we talk about this all the time. If you're not checking the guy's stick, you don't have the player covered, and that's what happened in that situation. I don't, Vladdy's a super smart guy. I don't think he thought someone else picked him up. He just kind of had a brain cramp or whatever you want to call it, and similarly on the Morgan Barron turnover. I mean, this was one of the occasions where, this is a guy who almost always looks, again, without being on the ice, we don't know if, the Vegas player called for the puck or what. It looked like, and Morgan Barron's not a casual player, Sean. So, but he made a casual play in that situation. The puck was picked off by Howden, and Howden absolutely caught Logan Stanley flat-footed, blew by him, and made a great play to get to the net and stuff it home. I mean, Brett Howden's having a great year. Brett Howden has 10 goals this year, for people who are thinking that, how is Brett Howden scoring on that goal and getting a breakaway? Well, Brett Howden's got 10 goals, including the GWG tonight. Kelly McCrimmon looking smart once again for extending Brett Howden for 5 years, where casual observers around the league are wondering why Vegas is signing a checker to a 5-year deal. It's another smart move. This guy loves Vegas. He fits perfectly with their identity and system. You can play him up and down the lineup. You can play him at center. You can play him at wing. He kills penalties. You can play in your power play if you need him. That's just another smart piece of management there. But sorry to digress. But I mean, hey, the Jets were going at various times in this game. They did a nice job to get it. They got the first goal, which is something they haven't been doing a lot of lately. Then battled back to tie it at 2-2. Battled back to tie it at 3-3. Showed lots of resolve in the game, but there were a few self-inflicted wounds. But at the same time, Sean, we know Vegas, and Bruce Cassidy talked about this at his availability, Sean. Games coming out of Thanksgiving are tough, right? They're tough for teams to get up for. Vegas had no problem getting up for the Jets. They swept the season series last year, and they were up for this game as well. So, but I'm with you. I don't. If you're a Jets fan at home thinking they should win every game, you're disappointed. But this is two very good teams, two division leaders who went toe to toe, and one of them made one better play than the other. So, yeah, I mean, the rest of the league is coming. We knew this was going to be happening, and when a team gets a target, teams are coming for them. New Jersey and Minnesota both 2 points back of the Jets after they built a big cushion. So they've got a big game left to wrap up this road trip. We talked earlier, Sean, this trip was, going to be about survival in a lot of ways for the Jets, but now they're being pushed, and hey, very simple. Push back. And in this game, the Jets did push back, but this is a game, I think Eric Comrie put it perfectly, Sean. That's a game the Jets need to get to overtime. When you battle back and make that a 3-3 hockey game, you got to get that game to overtime. And Stu Smith, this game was not Eric Comrie's fault that the Jets didn't get a point. Eric Comrie did his job again. Eric Comrie played well. And, again, I feel a little bit like I dropped the ball in this one, Sean. Knowing that Comrie was going to play next Sunday in the back-to-back against the Columbus Blue Jackets, we should have identified this game as the next start for Eric Comrie in a lot of ways, right? 2 divisional games on the horizon. I thought maybe the Jets might look at playing him against Buffalo, but that would give Comrie 2 starts in 3 games. This way, that's keeping him fresh, a start basically every week right now. This was not a goaltending issue for the Jets. They made some uncharacteristic blunders, and they cost them big time. And They did a lot of good things well, but Vegas did a few things better. And that's what happens when you're facing the top teams in the league. And other teams are raising their level, as you mentioned, and the Jets got to raise theirs.
This is one thing I'd say, before I do get into that, I wanted to mention the fine friends of Vittorio Rossi, who we are letting down on this night, Ken, absolutely slovenly out here. But I promise tomorrow when you see me on TV, it won't be a Jets game, but if you're tuning in to watch the Ottawa Senators and the LA Kings, who just beat the Winnipeg Jets, you'll see me looking like a Vittorio Rossi man with a very, very kind of Hollywood, see, that's the beauty
Well done.
I love about Vittoria is they've got kind of like, I can like take theme suits into places. So I've got a very Hollywood style going on tomorrow. Looking forward to it. And I got that, of course, by heading on down to Corridon Avenue, walking in to Vittorio Rossi, demanding Frankie and the boys, because they're the boys that you got to go talk to. You can head in there if you do loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, and they will do you up right. I do think what we're seeing here is the Winnipeg Jets going through a little bit of a pristine roofing wake-up call in the idea of, let's touch on it again, teams around the league kind of starting to wake up here. And of course, that means it's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you call with any of your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give them the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, and you'll be happy you did, because your house will thank you for it. It's like wrapping your home in a nice, a loving hug is what it is when you go there. Wake up call for the Jets, because I would say this. You talked about the mistakes being uncharacteristic. You're 100% in that. We're not used to seeing this. This is one of the things I was talking about, the details that the Winnipeg Jets had right so often before. I would say this. When you're under duress constantly, it's clearly easier to make mistakes, right? So the one thing that people were really used to seeing at the beginning of the year is, and we talked about this, like I remember going back to that Calgary game and Nazem Kadri taking that really, really boneheaded penalty out of the blue against the Winnipeg Jets. And you see these penalties that are taken, or even if we're looking for more recent examples, 2 games ago against the Minnesota Wild, the team that is now positioned to potentially take over first place in the NHL from the Winnipeg Jets if they can win the one game that they have in hand against the Winnipeg Jets. But I think the thing that you have to take into account is mistakes are, there are a couple things. They could be you just being lazy, not paying attention to detail. And I think for the most part, a coach will tell you a player shouldn't be making some mistakes. But there's times that Nazem Kadri one is a good example. The one against the Minnesota Wild is a good example of teams that either just got frustrated or something happened and they made boneheaded mistakes that ended up costing their team. The kind of mistakes that we're seeing here are kind of procedural mistakes. The Morgan Barron pass there is him just thinking, okay, we need to get some offense. Let's get it there. Well, that's that kind of frustration. Like, we need to get the puck to a place. We got to create something here. And sometimes when players stop doing the right thing and they start just saying, we need to create, they make that kind of mistake. The Nemestikov one, to me, is a little bit baffling because he knows better than that. And he just gets caught puck watching. And then all of a sudden he leaves his guy. He's in the back of the net and game over, right? In a situation like that. But there is something to be said when you are that team that is under duress, you make mistakes. And the Winnipeg Jets had the luxury of just being, in my mind, early in the season, so far ahead of their opposition that it wasn't very often that they were put under duress. So we talked over and over again about the details of the Winnipeg Jets and how they're always doing the right thing over and over and over and over again. Well, when you're kind of on top of your opponent all the time, the way the Winnipeg Jets had been early in the season, you get to be like that. You get to be in a rhythm. You get to be that team that isn't making mistakes because you're not being pressured into mistakes, because you've always got the puck and you're always cramming it down the opposition's throat and you're always holding them up in their zone and not letting them out. And I think what we're seeing here now is when you play the toughest thing that can happen, and I think especially a team like the Winnipeg Jets who get uncomfortable in situations like this, but when you can interrupt another team's rhythm, that's when you create mistakes. And to me, clearly what we've seen, I know I saw it in the LA game. We saw it here tonight. Florida was definitely able to do it to them in that loss when they beat them on Saturday night. And Nashville did it last Saturday. when you interrupt a team's rhythm, now it's not as easy to make the right play. Now it's not as easy to have those right details because you're taken out of that flow. And I think what you may be seeing now is flow doesn't just happen from shift to shift or even period to period. It can happen sometimes from game to game. And I think what's happening now is it's been a while since the Winnipeg Jets have felt like they really rolled, like they really flowed. And hey, you know what this sounds like in coach speak? It sounds like Scott Arniel talking before the game about the Jets getting up to speed. Let's get up to speed. Now, yeah, it's all fine and dandy to say the players have to skate more, but if you are skating and your opposition does a really good job of reaching out and chipping the puck off your stick, and you need to now slow down or stop to go back and retrieve the puck, it gets really hard to be up to speed. Now, I know there's certain details that could make the Jets game faster, but I think in my mind, Ken, there just really has to be an acknowledgement right now that the Jets are hitting a part of their schedule where they're being challenged, they're being taken out of their rhythm. Teams are finding a way to slow them down, and the Winnipeg Jets are struggling with that right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. They have they have teams around the league. They have their attention, but again, we knew this was going to be a test. The games always get harder in the second quarter, just like they're going to get harder in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. So yeah, you got to elevate your game, and in a lot of ways, the Jets did elevate. They were a lot quicker. Were there some moments in the first period when Vegas controlled the play? Absolutely. They had a fairly wide edge and shots on goal, but I think in terms of scoring chances and everything else, it was a fairly even period. So again, the Jets are playing fine, but can they find another level? I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. I mean, we talked about Cole Perfetti a lot the other day, Sean, teachable moments. Well, guess what? This is how you respond to teachable moments, right? This is it. For everybody who's saying in the chat room, Cole Perfetti can't play, well, guess what? Cole Perfetti has news for you. He went to the hard areas. He got a greasy goal and was rewarded in that situation. Then he had a better game. He got more involved, played better defensively, but scored twice. Now suddenly is up to 6 goals. So again, that's what you want to see from young players. You want to see how they're going to respond to tough situations. Same goes for the Jets, Sean. This is not a real stretch of adversity, but they're 2-3 when previously you've gone 15-1. So what is that? So they were now 3-5 in their last 8. You know, that's not a great record, but let's not cancel the season territory. They have to elevate in certain areas. Their power play carried them early on in the year, Sean, and for a long time in a big stretch of the quarter of the season. Today, there was a time when their power play could have got them back in the game. I mean, and they didn't deliver. I mean, they've delivered plenty during the season, and they're still right up there. So it's not a panic situation, but early on in the season, the Jets were just finding a way to get, one more goal or make one more play, one more breakup, one more time they got to the net. So biggest thing for me that changed, Sean, Vegas does not make it easy on a team to get to the front of the net. The Jets did a way better job of creating by getting to the net. Even on the Pionk goal, that's a double-layered screen. Scheifele and Gabe Vilardi both get to there, and that is why Neil Pionk scores on a wrist shot from the blue line. Against LA, they weren't doing that, right? They weren't doing that against LA, so they did take a step forward, but sometimes taking a step forward doesn't mean a team is going to win. And now, again, find a way to raise your level because, Sean, what do we know about the Dallas Stars? They'll be pissed off about the way they played in Winnipeg in the first meeting of the season. So the Jets better be ready to go because Dallas is going to be ready to go for them. Dallas had a huge win over the Colorado Avalanche this evening, and they know that the Jets have a big lead over them in the Central Division. And if they want to cut into that deficit, they're going to want to win. So anyways, I'm with you. This is not doom and gloom territory, but the Jets need to find a way to elevate a little bit more in certain situations. And again, that was always going to be their test for them. And it's not time to panic. This is not, the sky is not falling. This is not meaning that an 8-game losing skid is around the corner. But winning is hard in this league, and the Jets are finding that out after. I'm not saying it was easy for them, but going 15-1, as you mentioned, sort of sets some unrealistic expectations in our market and possibly in other places. And now the Jets are dealing with the regular ebbs and flows of a season. And yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why don't we go to Nikolai Ehlers next? Or you want to go
Well,
somewhere else?
well, what I do want to, since you brought him up, let's talk about Perfetti, because it's like, hey, I'll tell you this: Renny loves to be right, and it doesn't happen very often. So I have to celebrate those moments when it does happen. But one of the things we talked about with Cole Perfetti, and one of the things that I've said before, is like when he gets into these situations where he's, going through these goal droughts, like I'm a real big like get to the front of the net. Good things happen at the front of the net, and the one thing that I've thought about. And I would say this is an overarching thing with the Jets. Okay, I'm going to attack Perfetti first. I'm going to try and roll into the other thing. But Perfetti goes front of the net, gets a tip in. You see he drives the front of the net. He gets onto the weak side of the defenseman, kind of hides a little bit to get position on him, but then fights him a little bit for position and redirects it, and it's in the back of the net. I mean, this is what we've been saying for a really long time. Cole Perfetti against bad teams can create from distance. And listen, this is the hardest thing to learn in hockey is how to create offense from distance. And it's what the best hockey players in the world do well. And it's the most eye-popping thing. When you're one of these teams who can whip it around the outside and pass, and boom, it's in the back of the net. It looks gorgeous. It because not many people can do it. Cole Perfetti is one of those guys who can do that, but it's a little bit like the talk of Nick Ehlers earlier on in his career, where Nick Ehlers used that speed and he just kept using it to go where the easy ice was, and opposition were just to keep him on the outside, on the outside, on the outside. Cole Perfetti, what I've said from him before is that's fine and dandy that he got off to a hot start at some point of the season by getting 4 points against the San Jose Sharks and then 3 points against the St. Louis Blues. And then, added some points there and everyone said, oh, that'll get him going. But what is going to keep him going and get him to stop going through these quiet moments is doing what he did tonight, right? Like go in, get to the front of the net, dive in there, fight for some pucks. And even if you don't score that goal, kind of get the juices flowing. And then you get the other offense comes that came for him tonight. So I just think what we saw from Cole Perfetti here tonight was a little bit more of what we need to see from him more often. He did do something, Ken, that we've talked about him and the idea that it seems like it's the easier opponents that Cole shows up and gets all the points. And, it's point night, right? For Cole Perfetti, he takes advantage of point night. But this was a hard game, and this is a hard team. Cole Perfetti showed out for this game against a hard team that is difficult to get to the front of the net against. Listen, the last time when he got that game going against the San Jose Sharks, everyone says to me, oh, he got it going and this will get him in rhythm and that'll get him going and all those kind of things. And I look at it and I say, well, yeah, he got going against a team that was handing out free pizzas the entire night, and he jumped all over those free pizzas. I'm a little bit more interested in seeing him have one of these point nights where he goes and does it like he did tonight. This, to me, Ken, is the kind of game that wakes Cole Perfetti up, because he did it the right way. He did it the hard way. He earns that. I can take a lot more confidence and expectation that Cole Perfetti is going to wake up now and go on a little bit of a streak, because he went against one of the hardest teams in the league to get to the front of the net on, and did that and built his offense that way, rather than going up and putting 4 points up against a team that's struggling to keep the puck out of their own net and giving up 8 points in a game.
Awesome effort by Perfetti, Sean. 3 shots on goal, 2 block shots, 3 hits. He was way more involved, went to the hard areas. And yeah, I mean, the first one's a tip in. Good job. Went to the right area. Second one is an exceptional play by Josh Morrissey, but Perfetti got to the puck first and banged it home before Aiden Hill could recover. So this is the type of game that helps change the narrative, right? This is the kind of game where, it's going to be a hard game against Vegas. They play fast, they play hard, they have some of the biggest and toughest defensemen in the National Hockey League. So absolutely, that is a massive game for Cole Perfetti. Now you got to do it on multiple occasions and put points up against tough teams. Go again. He had 2 assists against Dallas. Go out and do it again. Stack games like that. And Sean, we've talked about this before. Cole Perfetti is not a complimentary player. He is a primary point producer, not at the level of Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor yet, But especially if there is an injury with Nikolai Ehlers, guess what? That's going to land on Perfetti to help pick up some of the slack. He's on the top power play unit when Ehlers is not there, and he needs to be a consistent point producer. And again, yep, like you said, this is one big step forward on that front.
Let's just say this. It paid off for him, I would think, in a big way to go to the front of the net tonight. It's one of these things we've been talking about. I get it. Like, here's my deal. When I see something and I think that like I'm on something over and over and over again, I've been on Perfetti, I get accused of not liking specific players. And for me, or I mean, all those years with the snake charmer offense, I get accused of, being a hater and all these different kind of things. Like, I would hope people understand that, like, when I'm saying something, whether I'm right or wrong, I'm sharing my opinion in a way that I if I'm thinking something is specifically going to work for the Winnipeg Jets or they should be doing, that's what I'm doing here. So when I talk about Cole Perfetti, this is the Cole Perfetti that personally, my opinion, I think is a Cole Perfetti that can be more successful, is a Cole Perfetti that doesn't go to sleep for wide swaths of the season, a Cole Perfetti that can find a way to score, not just in point night games, but in hard games. And to me, this is one of those games where he just kind of showed his own little blueprint. If I'm Cole Perfetti, I'm marking that game. I'm remembering how I played that game, because I think if I play that game, that's a repeatable game that is going to keep me engaged longer. It's going to make those stretches of not scoring goals a lot shorter. I think it really paid off for him tonight. And if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Okay, to that point about Cole Perfetti going to the dirty areas, we're starting to get into that pattern, and it's funny. I looked tonight and we saw, the Jets had a goal on 3 shots, and they're getting outshot in that first period, and you're thinking like, okay, it's one of these games where it looks like, if I'm just tuning in 12 minutes into the game, the Jets are getting pumped shot wise, but they're winning the game on the scoreboard. And I've always said that for years. The Jets, I said it a couple shows ago, the Jets are to a degree escape artists. They're Dean Gunnarsson, to use a great old Winnipeg reference. They can get out of a lot of problems with opportunistic scoring, and they do that time and time again. And I start looking at this and I'm thinking, jeepers creepers, like, here they go again, not getting shots. The other team is pouring in shots. They get that one goal and they think that's going to take care of things. I'll say this, that goal is the right goal that we're talking about. It's the right way to do things, whether it be opportunistic or not. But I'm solidly at the point, Ken, where I'm believing that at the beginning of the year, the Winnipeg Jets were doing a really, really good job of converting on their offense. And I've said this before, a lot of times the Jets will play teams in their high volume teams, and they'll outshot the Jets 36-24. And I'll think to myself, okay, but of the Jets' 24 shots, I kind of like the offense that they selected. And I like the idea that they held on to the puck a little bit longer and they set up higher quality chances. But I also am a big believer, kind of like I said with Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti is almost a microcosm of the Winnipeg Jets, how he had those games where he had got all these points from distance. And while it looks like it's good and it looks like he's getting points and he's building, what it's actually doing is it's rewarding him for the wrong kind of offense. And eventually that's going to dry up. And suddenly you're stuck on the outside trying to generate from the outside, and you're not generating a lot. This is a way of me talking about the Winnipeg Jets and saying, they're not getting nearly enough shot volume to be getting the kind of results they want. Here is a night where they get a goal from a tip-in. They get a goal just by throwing it on net from the point. It goes in the top corner. 2 of their 3 goals on their night are simply shot volume type plays. Get to the puck, get the puck to the net. Let's see what happens. The Jets got to be like, okay, you're at a stage right now where and this too, I think, has something to do with the level of opposition that you're playing. The Kings aren't going to allow you to score a lot of goals where you're just going to get to pass it wide open through a seam and take a one-timer and put it into the back of the net. You got to grind. And the Jets last season were really good at grinding and shooting the puck from the point and getting those tip-ins. They scored so many goals like that. I'd always talk about those being repeatable goals, because when you try 10 of them in a game, probably one of them is going to go in, and those kind of goals can be scored in every single kind of game. I think the Winnipeg Jets at this stage have gone into a number of games, and this is maybe the cost of the Minnesota game, where they get completely and totally pumped and they're not in the same building, and then they go out and on the few opportunities they get, it's in the back of the net. The Jets need to be generating more shot volume. They need to be getting more pucks to the net. They need to be getting dirty area kind of shots, because on this night, what I see and what I saw the other night against the LA Kings, to me, the LA Kings game is a very simple game of the Kings are just saying, let's just get it to the net and see what happens. And they win the game off goals like that. And the Jets are like, let's see if we can't pass it around and get the right kind of shot. And those shots never arrive. They got to get more shots. They got to add another element to their offense, which is quite simply getting to the front of the net, trying to bang it in and just have shots from the point, get the puck to the dangerous areas and capitalize on it.
Well, I mean, that's the the second Perfetti goal is a great example, right? Shot pass by Morrissey off the pad. Perfetti gets to the net drive by Iafallo, right? That doesn't end up on the score sheet is Iafallo driving the net, which creates some of the chaos in terms of the defenders, who's checking whom, and all of those things. So, in the high dangers, it's 11-9 for Vegas, including 6-2 in the first period. So yes, they had the better chances in the first, but the Jets had the better chances the rest of the way. But I'm with you. I think the Jets need to elevate, and what did I text you during the third period? Vegas's top line delivered 2 important goals in the game, and the Jets' top line to that point, it had nothing going. I mean, they had some chances, sure, but they aren't producing in the same way, right? In a game where the stars are shining, Vegas is, yes, they got 2 goals from Brett Howden, who is a complimentary player and a checker who can score. The Jets' top line wasn't going. Nikolai Ehlers, before he was hurt, was rolling. Nice assist. He got the whole play started, not just the pass later on to Morrissey, but he started that with a great net drive. But the Jets' top line, again, something is amiss. We know this. At least they were more involved in terms of getting shot generation and shot attempts here today. Sean, we talked about it the other day. 2 of the 3 guys had no shots on goal. Vilardi had 1. Today, 3 shots, 4 attempts for Vilardi. 2 shots, 6 attempts for Scheifele. Kyle Connor, 1 shot on goal, but 5 attempts. So they're generating more than the other night. But this is a line that has carried the team for stretches of this year, and right now they've gone a little bit quiet in terms of the goal scoring at 5-on-5. So they need to elevate a little bit. Now they were on the ice. Gabe Vilardi wins a clean draw. Neil Pionk's goal for sure. 2 guys got to the net. That's a good example of what you're talking about. Those guys aren't just guys that can score in the rush. They can score off the cycle. They can score with zone time, all of those things. But they need to get to the dirty areas, get to the blue paint. And again, Perfetti did it today, was rewarded. I think that top line, if they do those things against Dallas, they can be rewarded there as well. But I'm with you. They need to generate a little bit more. Yes, going from 14 shots to 25 in a game, important, but they can find another level as well for sure.
Let's just get right to Logan Stanley, because he seems to be a topic of conversation. SK says Stanley has played over 150 games. Villy 50. Last game, even Kenny said Villy was one of the best Jets in the last game. So Stan in again. He's not going to be Chara. Time to move on from him. There was another one here. Well, a comment says, were Villy and Miller healthy scratches? We'll get to that. And there should be one more that I wanted to read. Okay. Tosk Live says Stanley needs to put that guy into the wall, but he doesn't have the mobility to do so. That's actually a different thing. I'll say this.
Let's go to that. We were both talking about that.
I'm going to defend Logan Stanley on this one. Like, when you're on the blue line, you're not expecting your player in that situation to pass it to someone in stride like that. Like, I actually think Ken and I were talking about this. So this is a turnover by Barron on the stick of a guy. Now, that said, I mean, Vegas is at the tail end of a tiring shift. I don't know how he ended up out hustling everyone on the Jets down the ice. our guy from Oakbank, Brett Howden, has legs and lungs to have been able to pull off that play. I actually kind of put this more on Coughlin at the front of the net than I do on Logan Stanley, because Logan Stanley is the principal point of contact and the guy who would be trying to direct him away from the net, but he just can't do it because the turnover is so close to where he is that Brett Howden, tired or not, gets the puck facing down the other way, and Logan Stanley is at a dead stop. So this is one of those drills where you've got to catch the guy in practice. You have to stand beside the pylon. He gets a head start and gets skating, and you've got to get up to speed and catch him. He doesn't get up to speed in time to catch him in this situation. I don't know that I pin that on Logan Stanley. I think that Logan Stanley has to try and angle him as best as he can, use his stick to try to keep him from the net and make it as little a direct line to the net as possible. But Dylan Coughlin knows exactly where he's going. So it's Dylan Coughlin's job to try and beat Howden to the near post and not let him cross the ice the way that he does to cross the crease and score that goal. So I know, Ken, that you looked at Logan Stanley, and people are going to look at that because it's Logan Stanley in the tape for the vast majority of that. But for me, the cardinal sin on this play is clearly Barron turning over the puck the way he does. I think the second biggest error on this play is Coughlin, who kind of tries to chip the puck off of his stick rather than, I think, just getting in and trying to dive. And, this is one of those plays where you see a player dive and maybe like drive his goaltender in, but stop the puck on the way across. So my order of cardinal sin on this goes Morgan Barron first, Dylan Coughlin second, and Logan Stanley, to me, is the third most responsible for this goal, because it's a lot to ask for him to be able to get up to speed and stop that player with how sudden the turnover is and the way that the turnover is given to a player in stride.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I just, what I was thinking is I think that Logan Stanley, what I thought he could have done on the play is maybe taken a penalty there, or maybe you trip him. I don't think it's going to be called a penalty shot if it's called, if he trips him at the blue line or at the red.
I just want to jump in. Okay, I get that, and I totally understand that. If there's one person left to stop him from getting from the front of the net, then you take the penalty. But his job in that situation,
no, I mean initially at the blue line when he's got him with speed. If you got to either squeeze him, you got to get the man or the puck there first.
Regardless, I think what he's doing is he's trying to make it as little a direct line to the front of the net as he possibly can to try and buy Dylan Coughlin some time to get there. So I'm okay with him not taking the penalty there, because it's still a chance that your other defender may get there in time. So again, I stand by what I said before, but I do totally understand what you're saying about taking the penalty. I think he doesn't take the penalty because it's not one of these it's me and him situations, and if he beats me, there's nothing left. There's still a chance that Coughlin can break up that play.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the goal twice now, and you've been describing it. I mean, Coughlin's got to come an extra 50 feet on that play on the support. He's ahead of Stanley in the defensive zone. I think the hustle back is fine. I mean, could he have slid a little bit harder? Sure. But I mean, it's his first game of the year. Again,
yeah, but you're not thinking that. You're not thinking that if you're like,
no, what I'm telling you is
or not.
No, but I mean, what I'm telling you is that Coughlin's coming from the right point. This play all happens on the left-hand side. So I think he actually closes the gap pretty well in terms of the back check. And I mean, he slid out and got his stick out. I mean, could he have been a little firmer on the play? Maybe, but I'm definitely not. I definitely think it's Barron, Stanley, Coughlin in terms of the blame. Again, this is not. I don't want to get into this. It's not that big a difference. But to me, if he's coming an extra 75 feet from the right point. I mean, like that's a pretty long distance you're asking him to make up that play. And hey, if those two guys have been D partners forever, sure, then you could say maybe Stanley knows that the guy can close the gap there. But again, and I'm not blaming Stanley for not tripping him. I'm just saying in that situation, you would have liked to have had a little better gap. But when you're flat-footed, it's incredibly hard. And Howden's a fast player. So again, this isn't Logan Stanley's so slow he can't play in the NHL moment. But again, I think that, and again, just want to stay on Coughlin for a second. I actually quite like Coughlin's game, and I think Dylan Coughlin showed the coaching staff that he deserves more looks in the game, quite frankly. He was very involved offensively. Once Ehlers left the game, he was involved on some second power plays. He makes an excellent seam pass to Nino Niederreiter and on the first power play the Jets had. We know Coughlin has a big shot, much like Colin Miller has. Coughlin in the game, Sean, 19 shifts for 1438, 2 shots on net, 7 shot attempts, and one hit, 2 giveaways. But his mobility was very good. I thought he defended pretty well during the game. And quite frankly, I'd like to see more of him, to be honest.
I just want to go back and say, a lot of people are like very, very soundly making the point that Glenn Fricker makes here. He says that was all on Barron with a weak backhand pass. This is very much like, I know if I was the player and I was Dylan Coughlin or Logan Stanley, I'd be very upset if I was watching this, that we've spent as much time as we have going over their responsibility in this case, when this was just a clearly terrible play by Morgan Barron. I mean, if there's a ladder of responsibilities on this play, basically what we are doing is we are ignoring the arsonist and arguing about the 2 firemen whose job it was to suddenly have to put out the fire that was created by a very bad play. Like, I don't think any of the Jets, I think maybe Josh Morrissey is just a really, really phenomenal skater. Maybe Pionk as well are players that can recover in that situation fast enough to get back up the ice and stop Brett Howden from getting to that position. Logan Stanley was put in a no-win situation in that play there. Morgan Barron's error is the error in this situation. We can argue for days but this is all those things. You put players into pressure and you force them to make a tough decision. They don't always make the right decision. Should Logan Stanley have taken a penalty? Maybe he should have. Should Dylan Coughlin have dove and tried to seal off to the front of that? Maybe he should have, but those are tough
he did
decisions
dive, though.
to make. Go watch it. He kind of
I watched it twice
backwards. Well, I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I'm not seeing a hard dive. I'm seeing him try and reach out for a poke check, and then he falls off of his feet. I see in that situation. It's not the kind of dive that would cut off the player from being able to take the puck across the front of the net. Regardless, I know you really want to argue for Coughlin in this situation. I'm saying we're having an argument over 2 guys who were put in a terrible situation here, and I think it's almost unfair to be going after them and hanging much of this play on them at all. This is a terrible turnover by Morgan Barron that is just shy of giving a guy a clear-cut breakaway. It's the closest thing to it. And so I don't blame the 2 defensemen who are in that situation because of that. I will say this. This is a great point by Doug Henderson, who says, Kovacevic, Chisholm, how many other defenders are we going to get rid of instead of Stanley? Time is up. This is a really good way of putting this because when we saw Declan Chisholm playing with the Minnesota Wild, he has become a player for that team. I think that Minnesota Wild look at picking up Chisholm and think like, we got this guy for free. We just got to pick this guy up for free. That is a massive pickup for them. And this is worthy. I think this is the second time in 2 shows that Doug Henderson has hopped the fence in my backyard and found his way into the hot tub because this is a red hot take, the kind that he could only be giving if he was sitting in my backyard in my Arctic Spas hot tub, because there's no such thing as a cold take in an Arctic Spas hot tub, especially the one with the Spa Boy package like mine has. You want to check out the Arctic Spas line. I know where you got to go do it. Go to Arctic Spas, talk to my guy Dustin. He will take care of you, knows everything that you need to know about those kind of things. Okay, I want to move on and I want to let's get in specifically to the third pairing and your take on the decision that was made to switch up to the third pairing on this night.
Yeah, I mean, there was no pregame availability. Really, nobody saw this coming until the warm-up came, and those guys were rolling with the third pairing on the ice. So, Scott O'Neill said he wanted some fresh legs. I mean, Ville Heinola has played 2 games in this year, so would he be feeling it a little bit after a couple of days? I mean, this is the thing, Sean. Coming back from that kind of an ankle injury, there's for all the free Ville folks out there, and yes, I think that Ville has done a nice job in his first 2 games, but there's going to need to be a little bit of a load management situation ahead for Ville Heinola when it comes to coming back from this ankle injury. So was I a little bit surprised that Scott Arniel chose this day for those guys to come in with the no morning skate and a little bit off routine? Sure. But Scott said that he wanted to get Dylan Coghlan some ice time. So, he's going to be fired up to play against his buddies. So I've got no problem whatsoever with him putting Dylan Coghlan in. And, I understand. And there, Tom Ducharme, if you count the Moose games, that's 4 games and 6 nights for Ville Heinola. So I've got no issue with Ville Heinola sitting down today. This isn't a matter of he wasn't playing well enough, but you're going to have some load management. In terms of Logan Stanley, Scott Arniel said it after the game. They need to get him in there. And now if that's how they feel, then they're going to get him in there. Do I think they could have waited a little bit longer? For sure. I mean, they also they've had 1 practice on this road trip basically. So if you're going to wait, and it's an afternoon game on Sunday. So if you wanted to get him in, there weren't really any other opportunities to wait. This game is not on Logan Stanley. That was 1 play. And as you mentioned, that's Morgan Barron's had the egregious error on the play. And some people complaining about Hayden Fleury. I mean, Hayden Fleury, is he going to be a long-term solution as the number 4 defenseman? No, but Hayden Fleury has been fine. I had heard some people talking about Fleury being at fault. When one of the Barbashev goals, he's closest to him, but the other goal by Barbashev from the slot is all Rasmus Kapari, Sean. We praised Kapari for all the great things that he did the other day. Today was one of the examples. He was clearly the closest guy to Barbashev, and he didn't check him. He was standing beside him. He let him loose. The puck came to him, and he blasted it home from the slot. That was bad coverage by Rasmus Kapari on that
You
goal.
didn't think that was Iafallo in that situation?
I personally didn't know. I mean, I understand some people could feel that way, but I thought he had him, and then he kind of let him loose, and then he was open.
That was Iafallo. My take was that Iafallo kind of followed and got caught. There's a couple times tonight the Jets get caught puck watching. I'll go back to kind of the original question when we talk about that third pairing. I was a little surprised to see that. I get it. Like the answer to this question. Okay, a lot of times you want our takes on this and you want to understand why it's being done. A lot of people are like, why would they ever do that? Okay, so let's try and answer that question. Scott Arniel has talked about the idea that because the Jets have done so good, coaches don't like leaving guys sitting in the press box for a really long time. They sometimes like to have a rotation. They sometimes like to get guys going in there. They don't want to lose guys to not playing, because if someone gets injured, they need that guy to come in and play. So the fact of the matter is Scott Arniel probably would have wanted to get Dylan Coghlan in before this and Logan Stanley back after his injury, and Ville Heinola, he would have liked to have had him early and had a little bit more of a rotation going. It's hard to break up something that's working so well, and the Winnipeg Jets were working amazingly. Now the Winnipeg Jets are coming back down to earth, losing 5 out of 8 games, and now you can get in a situation where you say, well, it's not that we didn't like the way you played, we just didn't like the result, and we feel we need to change things up. And I do think that coaches, for the most part, that a lot of people don't think about these kind of things, but a coach has to, in the back of his mind, be thinking, I'd like to get Dylan Coghlan in for a game. And when he has an opportunity to do it and take a player without saying to the player, you're getting taken out because you screwed up. Rick Bowness had a really good explanation of this last year, where he's like, sometimes it's really good to take a guy out when things are going good and say to him, listen, it's clearly not because you're not playing well. I've just got other players to manage here, and that's where you are. You're not Josh Morrissey. You're not Pionk. You're not one of these guys that has to be in the lineup every night. You're at the level of a bunch of guys who are in and out of the lineup. So I'm taking you out. Just don't worry about it. Keep working hard in practice. You'll be back in there. We love what you're doing. It's easier to take guys out than that, and then being the coach who's like, well, you sure screwed that up. You're out of here, right? That's how you lose guys, right? So this was probably an opportunity for Scott Arniel to say, I don't know that there's much of a replacement drop-off between Logan Stanley and Dylan Coghlan and Ville Heinola and Miller in this situation, right? So they get a chance to get in some guys. They shake things up a little bit. You put in the backup goaltender and you try and get a better result than what you have been getting as of late. Because I don't care who you are or what you're saying. I know Jets fans absolutely love that Helly Steele, but as a coach, you watched your team get absolutely pumped by the Minnesota Wild, and then you watch them go lose their next game. You're not saying, oh, well, it's just one game. You're saying, okay, that's 2 games in a row now. We need to switch something up here. So tried switching up something up. I get it. I get the Stanley thing from what he said in the past, because he wants to put Stanley in against big, hard teams. And that's a team like this. But I do also agree with the people who are talking about this and the people who are frustrated with this. I think Logan Stanley, I don't again, I was just defending him on that play there. But I also think that tonight's an example that says to you, listen, if you put Logan Stanley in a game that you were playing a big, tough team and trying to make it hard to get to the front of the net, and I noticed Logan Stanley in a million dust-ups and punching guys in the head and the back of the net and like turning it into an absolute war, then I could understand the argument of putting the 6'7" really big guy into the lineup. That's not what we saw here tonight. That's not what we've typically been seen. If Logan Stanley were the kind of guy that you plugged into the lineup and he absolutely tipped over the apple cart and knocked all the glasses off the table and flipped the kitchen table over, that would be something. That's not what we're seeing, though. So I think people in the chat room are very, very valid to be pointing out, where are we going with this, this experiment, especially when they point out the players who are lost, who have gone to other places in order to keep Logan Stanley, and that size factor that I just do not see paying off the way that the Jets would suggest or talk about it paying off.
Yeah, I mean, in a game like this with Keegan Kolesar, Scott O'Neill probably wanted to have someone to neutralize him. But again, that also, I didn't see those two guys bump heads at all today, right? I mean, that's the point you're making.
Yes. Give Sweet Lou a shout out before we move on to our Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game.
For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Furlan, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@loufurlan.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Furlan, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including our podcast.
Ken, what do you got for the Got You Covered play of the game?
Yeah, again, I don't want people to think that I'm just the new president of the Dylan Coughlin fan club, but he made an excellent play at the start of the game. Backdoor play, Carlson has Brett Howden wide open, and Coughlin gets his stick down again. And for a guy playing his first NHL game of the season, that was a very responsible and heady play. So for me, that was my choice for the OG's Johnston Group. We've got you covered.
Yeah. I mean, you walk into an NHL game and you steal a goal off the board. That's like a goals expected stat that you are tinkering with, which is makes a huge difference. So I'm not going to argue with that one at all, Ken. I'll hand that one over to you. That's a big win for you on that one. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Let's go to our keg save of the game. What do you got?
It was Comrie on that redirection. I think I'm going. I think it was Dorofiev had the redirection, the one-handed redirection glove save. I think is my choice there.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, and we didn't really talk much about Comrie. This is just another example of a game where Comrie's right there. I'm not taking a look at anything that happens in this game and saying, well, Comrie let them down in this situation here. Is there an argument to say that the Winnipeg Jets may have won that game if Connor Hellebuyck was in there? He's the best goaltender in the world. Maybe he could have stolen some surprises here or there, but I don't look at this and think that, I mean, I think something else has to be said. I was talking with the Hockey Night in Canada crew about this tonight. Like, take a look at the fact that Laurent Brossoit looked great with the Winnipeg Jets, and David Riddick, at least at the beginning of the season, looked really good with the Winnipeg Jets, and Comrie both times around has looked really good with the Winnipeg Jets. Give credit to the goaltending coach, but let's start giving credit to the Winnipeg Jets as a team and how they help to make their goaltenders shine. Connor Hellebuyck, again, I've said this before, used to be the guy who bailed out the Winnipeg Jets, and clearly is the guy who can still do that, but for the most part, he's a great goaltender playing behind a really great team that makes his life easy the vast majority of the times, and he's benefited from it regardless. That's our keg save of the game. It doesn't matter what we think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner from our last show, that would be Isha Boy Bruce. Isha Boy Bruce, direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name, send me an email, and I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our hashtag TCB lamplighter. Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, on the repeatable goal front, I mean, the tip-in is nice by Perfetti to snap the 11-game drought, but to me, it's the second one. It's just such a smart play by Josh Morrissey. We talked about the need to create more, and that's a typical shot pass off the pad, net drive by a follow, and Cole Perfetti takes care of the garbage collection, and that's a textbook play. You work on it in practice all the time, and they delivered it perfectly there, and that's what I'm going with.
You know who I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with the Manitoba boy.
There you go. It's a beauty.
Brett Howden and that goal that he takes. I mean, regardless of who made the mistake and how egregious that mistake was, I'll tell you this, like at the end of that shift, people I think are almost forgetting that was that shift that had come off of a power play, and the defenders got stuck out on the ice for Vegas. And that was one of those shifts where you would think like a guy needs help from his teammate, like pushing him from behind to get him to the bench fast enough. And for him to find, the wind and the power and the strength to do that at that time, that to me is a really, really great goal. So much so that it goes to the opposition in this one. So that's my TCB lamplighter. Doesn't matter what I think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your TCB lamplighter, and you are automatically entered to win a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your own 8-pack, head on down to TransCanada Brewing Company at 11290 Kenniston, where they've got all the beers, a great atmosphere down there, and absolutely great food. Do yourself a favor, go try it out, and do yourself a favor and let your ears perk up, because if you were here last show and shared with us your lamplighter, you've got a chance to win, and that would be the winner this time around is Larry. Just straight up Larry. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at at TCB send you a voucher for a Frosty Delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TCB. It is the nectar of the gods. Ken, that's it.
Well, quick one. Anything to get into Ehlers quickly? Sorry, some people have been asking. Scott O'Neill had no update on Ehlers after the game. For those who didn't see the play, it was an odd one. Ehlers threw a body check on Pavel Dorofeyev. It looked harmless, but on the follow through, his left ankle / leg kind of got tangled up and kind of went in an odd direction. So Scott O'Neill officially called it day-to-day, but I'm certainly not expecting to see him on Sunday. Sean, are you? I would be shocked if Ehlers plays. And
no.
So anyway, just quickly, our buddy Bick wonders if Ehlers is going to be out for an extended period. Do you test drive Brad Lambert in that spot, or you just go as simple as putting Gustafsson in? I would say Gustafsson's probably in for Sunday against Dallas, but it would be again. It all depends on the length and the severity of the injury, but I wouldn't be surprised if that gets test driven at some point.
Bick Ronis?
I know, yeah, it's hard to believe.
Asked a constructive question for the show. I love this question. It's a great question.
I thought I started, but I don't see it.
He would have got the Arctic Spas.
Indeed.
I get him kicked out of my hot tub there for that good one. This is a good one. We talked about this at the beginning of the year. I think the Winnipeg Jets, I'm not going to speak for you, Ken, should be at a place where when you lose skilled players, you have the kind of skilled players down in the AHL who you should be able to try and audition. Okay, now one of the things that makes this tricky is, you heard my thoughts on Alex Iafallo last game, and maybe Cole Perfetti heard them as well, which is why he showed out here today protecting that spot on the second line. But you can always move up Iafallo, and I think he's a great guy to move into that spot, and then it becomes a very traditional fourth line when you've got the Gus Bus down on that fourth line. But at some point, you have to start seeing what you have down on the small club, and taking the opportunity to bring some players up like that and have a look at them, I think is something that the Jets should be doing. And I just think it's something too, that if you can start creating that culture where your AHL team looks and says, uh-oh, injury, this may be my opportunity. And it's not just bringing up Dominic Toninato, and it's not just bringing up AJF, it's bringing up the future. That would be not only something I think is good for your culture, but I think it's exciting for fans at the same point. And I think it's a good way to handle those players and give them little bits of NHL tests. So great question, Bick. Thank you for the constructive question that added and built on the Kenny and Renny show here.
And sorry,
tonight.
last one, 3 goals, 9 points in 14 games for Lambert this year with the Moose. Someone else had asked there. So, and again, this is not something that we're going to be harping on, but if for some reason Nikolai Ehlers chooses to sign elsewhere next year, Brad Lambert is the most likely guy to be going into that spot. So it would be an opportunity for him to get an early test drive. Not that anyone is suggesting that this is a done deal or whatever else, but I would think that there'd be some merit in that if it's going to be longer term. But again, we'll wait and see what the diagnosis is before we'll probably dig into this a little more on Sunday. Let's put it that way. Have a great show tomorrow. Enjoy LA and safe travels, my friend.
All right. And for all you folks out there, if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space as the Friday turns to Saturday, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Pristine Roofing, Arctic Spas, the Johnston Group, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course, the Keg. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to you, everybody. We will reconvene and do this all over again on Sunday as the Jets try and get back into the win column against a Dallas Stars team that, I don't know, can I take a look at them? I feel like Dallas is one of those teams that's just kind of cruising right now and conserving energy for the later part of the season. So I don't know what to expect from them, but one way or another. Yeah, Ken says it. You heard it here first, folks. Ken says they'll be ready. That's it. Talk to you later, folks. Bye-bye.